Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for joining us in today's Facebook Live session. So today we're doing things slightly differently. You may notice that there are two of us on your screens. I will allow my partner here, good friend Lippy, to introduce himself a little more later on. But just to give you an idea, so today the two of us are going to be sharing our own perspectives, and we'll let you in a little bit on what the process will be and how that will go. But for now, allow us to introduce ourselves and welcome you to this Facebook Live session. So for those of you who've been with us before, of course, you're familiar with our more conventional sessions where we have one facilitator talking about one general topic throughout the session for the afternoon. Now we're going to be doing things slightly differently this afternoon. And so for today, we thank you for joining us. For those of you who will be seeing this recording much later, thank you for tuning in. And we hope you find this to be an insightful and an interesting discussion. And I think you'll understand more clearly later on why we've called this conversations. So thank you for joining us. Let us know if you have any thoughts, if you have any questions, any ideas you'd like to share. And we'll get back to you in the comments, or perhaps we may even jump off from your own comments, your own input, to kick us off with other sessions in the future. So I'll keep quiet for the next few moments and allow my partner Lippy to introduce himself for now.
Thanks, Pao. So hi everyone, I'm Lippy. Good afternoon. I am a certified facilitator for CLCI, FranklinCovey Philippines. I run several programs. So of course, there's the 7 Habits program, as well as 5 Choices for Extraordinary Productivity and Project Management Essentials. There's also a program that Pao and I facilitate. It's about managing millennials and managing the next generation, something I really like to share and teach what the research is showing about. And that's something that we also feel strongly because I feel, right, Pao, we both fall into that age category as well. Maybe more me, less you, but I'm sure you understand the whole spirit of things. And when me and Pao were talking, we said that why don't we have a conversation about the questions that you guys throw at us, that you guys send, that questions that we hear when we run these sessions. And one of the inspirations of this session, of what we're doing, is that we haven't seen the questions yet. We have not prepared anything. What we will share are what concepts we have found that has worked for us and that has helped, right, in the solving or in the tackling of whatever it is that you'll be throwing at us. I'm also an ICF certified coach, so I do bring a coaching approach to how I'm sharing how I use the content. Okay, for me, the seed of this was all the participants I've had in my workshops always asking me, Lippy, that's a great concept, but in the real world. And it makes me, right? And it makes me think like, but aren't we in the real world? I mean, right? And so I believe there might be for me in my coaching head, I'm seeing that the person might be experiencing some barriers, or maybe they're seeing the world a little differently, right? As compared to, that's nice what you're saying, but out here in the real world, right? So me and Pao, we're here to share. So what has worked for us in tackling these concerns out here in the real world?
Absolutely. So first, Lippy, thank you for making me feel a few years younger. Unfortunately, no, I will have to admit that I do not belong to that age bracket. But yes, I am passionate about understanding that age bracket, or rather this group of people that we call millennials. And I'm also passionate about helping everyone else, whether millennial, Gen X, my own generation, or other generations, pretty much collaborate with one another. So like Lippy, I do have some coaching training as well. So we were both passionate about coaching, and we're both passionate about helping others, our colleagues, our friends, even our clients, find their own answers and their own, I guess what we'll call insights, their own reality for each of these concepts and every experience and challenge that we face. So as Lippy mentioned, what you'll be hearing from us this afternoon or in this recorded session will be our own perspectives, our own experiences. And we may have differing views. We may come at the concepts, the challenges from different angles. And I think, personally, I feel that's the beauty of it. There is no single answer or there is no single truth to these concepts. And it's going to be an interesting session because, as Lippy mentioned, we don't have a script. So right now, we're not looking at any script. We're not looking at this being the next topic. In fact, what will be happening, Lippy, if you allow me to introduce the process a bit further, is we have a few friends in the background here. So namely, we have Javik and Amanda in the background. And what they'll be doing is they'll be pulling up concepts, words, ideas, and you'll be seeing them on your screens. And while this may seem rather unfamiliar to all of us, we will all be seeing them for the first time when they come up on your screens. So we don't have a script. And basically what we'll be doing is we'll be having a conversation, Lippy and me, and we'll be sharing that conversation with you. And these conversations will be triggered by, and will hopefully revolve around these topics and these ideas, which will come up on your screens. So Lippy, do you want to go straight to it, or shall we have a bit more introduction?
Let's see the first thing that we get from our what are we calling it? The comment grab bag. Well, we have to name it. We have to name this bag of whatever it is. All these comments and questions that we get.
I like that idea. Comment grab bag. So Javik, if you will share with us the first idea, the first concept that we'll be discussing. People who are easily offended. Okay, this is an interesting one. Lippy, would you want to go first, or?
It was like Javik thought of a sentence that described me a few years ago. Well, there's several perspectives, but for me, people who are easily offended. Well, I think that the approach differs whether you're that person or you're the one trying to deal with someone with someone who's easily offended.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yes, and I love how you brought that up. That there are those potentially at least two perspectives or two sides to it. Are you that person who is easily offended, or are you a person who is trying to deal with a person who is?
Let's make it simpler for our audience.
Sure.
Tackle the situation where it's us. I have to deal with someone who is easily offended. Because it's harder for people to admit to yourselves that you're the person who's easily offended. So, let's park that first.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And what if I'm the one who's dealing with someone who's easily offended? I remember coaching someone about this, and and I remember asking the person, why does this matter to you?
Okay.
Because at the heart of it, if this is a concern of yours, what does it matter for you to deal with this person?
Okay.
Right? And why am I raising this up? A real world example. Because if you can afford to put some distance between yourself and this person, and if you don't really have to be dealing with this person, and then why are you putting yourself in a situation where you have to deal with this person constantly? Now, if it's an important reason, if there's example, for people who are easily offended, the next phrase I usually get from some flavor of this is, and this person is my boss.
Okay.
Right? And so because this person is my boss, it matters that I have to deal with this person. I think it has to be clear to you first what's making it so valuable to have to learn to deal with someone who's easily offended.
That's a good point. So what I heard from you there, Lippy, two things. One, why does it matter to me? What makes it so important to deal with this person who is easily offended? And then the other one is, how do I learn to actually deal with this person? If it does turn out to be important, or if it's something that I cannot avoid, then there's the challenge, I guess, or the call to learn how to do it.
And last bit of sharing from before I invite you to also put your thoughts on this, right? In the 7 habits, we have a concept that we call, the first habit is to be proactive. And part of that is, taking a pause to figure out, how do I respond to this situation or not? Right? And part of the response can be, if this person, it's hard to deal with, and yet it's not important for you to actually really be dealing with this person, then you can afford to minimize contact. That's one of the
True.
things that I've heard my coaches, try to work around the situation,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And yet it all well, if you have to work with this person, then it's about picking what's the right response when whatever behavior comes up, right?
Right.
What do you think, Pao? What's on your mind?
Well, I'm just jumping off from what you've already shared, and I like how you alluded or you called out the 7 habits, I guess. And on my end, I feel there are a few other habits that come into play here, and the one that comes to mind most immediately is habit 5, where we say seek first to understand, then to be understood. And to me, the reason that that becomes relevant is also sometimes. So I guess the first time, if we were to play this out, real world scenario, so to speak. So imagine, let's say I was speaking to my boss becomes easily offended. I think personally, the first time around, fair enough that I'm surprised or that I'm taken by surprise that he or she becomes so easily offended by something that I say or don't say or that I do or don't do. I mean, I don't have a background. I don't know. Maybe I haven't been briefed. So first time around, first few times, probably fair enough. But if I have some experience and I've done this before and I know that this person gets offended easily or seems to be offended, then to my mind, there is also that, what shall I call it? There is the call or there's that invitation for me to try and figure out and understand what might it be that triggers this person to seemingly be offended or to feel like he or she is being offended. And the reason I bring this up is it reminds me of a portion in Habit 5 specifically, where we say that for the second part, when it's our turn to share our views or to seek to be understood, we say that we use I statements rather than you statements.
Yeah.
And what I realize is that sometimes we as human beings tend to point to the other person. And very often I think we do it without any malice. It's just the way we do things and the way we speak. So I may say something like, Lippy, you're really like that. And to me, it may make perfect sense. But then for the other person, especially if it's something that he or she doesn't appreciate, then maybe that's where the offense or the taking of the offense comes.
It's like seeing you raise your voice, right?
Yes.
And get red in the face, and then me telling you, oh, mukhang galit ka ba? And then
Right.
it's you telling me na, no, hindi ako galit, I'm not angry, all the while raising your voice, right? Something like that.
Or even something as simple, ayan ka na naman. And maybe for me, it's a statement of fact. Here we go again. But then it may sound to the other person like a complete judgment of his or her character. So I think the invitation there is also to try and understand. It may seem to me like the other person is easily offended. But then perhaps there is a challenge or there's a call for me to understand what is it that I'm doing or not doing, or what is it about the way I'm doing or not doing things that offends this person. Maybe there's something there.
Yep, I like how you're bringing up also habit 5. It's it's also getting to know the person, because maybe on some level you haven't gotten to know the person well enough.
Right.
Like if I can think about my previous office mates, there were some who, for them, talking about family was okay, but for some of them, talking about family was in the office was a taboo thing. So, and we can easily talk an hour on this topic, right? Yeah, and I think let's look at what else is in the comment grab bag that we have.
Sure.
But yeah.
I
like how JVic and Amanda are throwing us these purposely vague statements. Okay. Oh, I was like, oh no, ngayon. But this brings you to an important point, right? Sometimes I catch myself complaining about a situation, but not thinking about what is it that I really want to happen in this situation. Right? I keep bitching and complaining about the negative aspect, but not thinking about, yeah, sure, that's all the negative stuff, but what is it that I really want? What is it that I want to get out of this situation? And that's habit 2.
Right.
And from the 2 statements that we have, it sounds like if this was be like, okay, you're talking about maybe a difficult situation, just stating the fact, and the phrase here is being choosy. And in my mind, it's like, oy no ngayon, right? What is it about being choosy, you want to change, you want to deal with. And so I feel this is one real world tip, right? It helps to think about what is it that you want to happen, or what is it specific here that you want to get some change happening, or or maybe there is no change that needs to happen, right? Maybe this person puts this phrase, this vague phrase, into our comment grab bin. It's about being choosy, but then it has nothing to do about changing it. It's about, I like being choosy. Well, good for you. Maybe that's what's there. And I just wanna throw that out. And if it seems like we'll be telling the fortune of these statements.
Well, yeah. On my end, the first time I saw the phrase being choosy, I was looking at it from an entirely negative perspective, and I don't know why. Maybe it's previous experience, maybe it's programming, as we sometimes like to put it. But initially, I was looking at it from an entirely negative perspective. And if I were to, I guess, translate it to Filipino or the local vernacular, perhaps I was looking at it from what would be closest to maarte.
It's your child being offered like three different dishes and not wanting to eat any of them.
Right, yes. And or sometimes being offered the exact same dish that supposedly they liked yesterday, and all of a sudden now it's a no, yucky. And so yeah, it was exactly that. I had that feeling of okay, but then as you were speaking, Lippy, I entirely agree. Habit too comes to mind here, because being choosy, when we look at it, at least now that I begin to look at it give it a bit more time to breathe, so to speak, as an idea, I realize it's not necessarily negative. In fact, it can be a very positive, a very proactive, very purposeful, I guess, approach to an experience. So, for example, just to jump off your idea of different dishes. If we were to go to, let's say, a buffet, and we know that isn't a thing nowadays.
Yeah, not yet. Anyway.
Because of our current situation. But if we were to go to a buffet, some people would have the perspective of try everything because it's all there in front of you. On the other hand, some people would be very, and I think the more positively accepted term would be selective. Some people would be more selective about the dishes that they choose. So one person might simply choose salad, fruits, maybe a fish dish here and there. And I know that many people might be giving us weird looks. Or sure, yes. Or maybe a steak, yes. So the point being, if you're clear about what you like, or if you're clear about where you want to go. So for example, the person who chooses a salad, fruits, and a fish dish, most likely, of course, there is some assumption involved here, most likely has some sort of health or wellness inclination or orientation in mind. And therefore, they're probably after overall well-being, maybe a certain weight target or a maintenance of certain weight.
or I recall this friend of mine who would always go for the most expensive items in the buffet because their purpose was to try to make as much of their money back.
There you go again.
Get as much value out of what they're paying from the buffet, right? And that's also being choosy in that regard.
And I guess to go back to just to what you shared earlier, there is a purpose to it. And the end in mind of these people would be to get the most out of their money. So the specific buffets, without naming the restaurants that come to mind, would be perhaps the buffets that serve some sort of premium steak, or maybe the few buffets that serve foie gras and have it on tap, so to speak. So yeah, by all means, go ahead and maximize your investment, so to speak, in the buffet.
We should be doing this in a restaurant somewhere. Here's my invitation out there. If ever you get to watch this video, whoever this person is, if this is your statement or you have a similar experience to this, we'd love for you to come on to our conversation so we can talk about this.
But I guess, if we were just to move away from the steaks and the foie gras and the salads for a moment. I mean, we can be choosy, we can be selective in almost anything we do. We can be choosy in hiring. We can be choosy in projects that we accept. So for example, for Lippy and even myself, if we were to be selective about the clients that we take on in our coaching, very often there is a reason for it. And there's a whole range of reasons. For some people, it's simply that they're more comfortable dealing with certain types of people. For some people, it might even simply be I only deal with certain people from a certain social class.
So I'm hearing it really boils down into, do you know what's the reason why you're being choosy and
I
being
think that's it.
selective
Yes,
about
you
it,
nailed
right?
it there. Yeah. And do you know what the reason is? And I think there is value to understanding. There is value to
Yeah.
understanding why. And the reason I say that is because I myself have found myself at times doing things for a supposed reason, but then I don't have that perfect clarity around it. But when the clarity came around, or when I was forced to clarify it for myself, then I guess it gave me all that more conviction. And it also allowed me to, I guess, allow certain areas to breathe. When you realize that I'm doing it for this reason, then you realize maybe I don't have to be so choosy or so maarte in certain
Yeah.
areas. You sort of allow yourself a bit more freedom there. Sorry, I've been speaking, rambling for the past I don't know how many minutes. Anything to add on your end, Lippy?
No, that's really it. And if you're on the receiving end, it's all it again going back to habit 5, to listening and
Right.
really, so one thing in common, me and Pao, just for everyone to just something we want to share, is that our wives got pregnant around the same time. So Pao with his son, his second child, and then me with my first. And so this being choosy, exact same thing. I cooked three different viands for my son. Wouldn't eat any of it, and I'm like, being, that's a totally different topic in and of itself, right?
Right.
Because I am listening to the context of where and how these statements happen, of what we're getting, is also important to how we're answering. So that's
Right.
one real world tip, right? I never take anything in a vacuum. It's always important to really understand what's the concept, what's behind this, and what's happening, before jumping into a conclusion. I remember telling myself this, like, why is my son being so choosy? Only to find out we've been feeding him the same thing for the 5th day straight. That's why.
And I think I understand you there. When you feel like you've hit the jackpot on the dish to give your
I'm like,
daughter, your
that's
child,
it,
it's like,
diba?
yeah, let's maximize this to the hill.
If you're gonna eat it and it's good, might as well just
Gold.
yes, maximize it.
But I like how you pointed I guess, our attention to the other person, meaning the recipient of the choosiness, so to speak. Because sometimes, going back to the idea we had in the first topic, sometimes people take offense when they simply feel like, ang arte naman nitong taong to, ang selan naman yan. Why do you have to be so choosy? And as you pointed out, Lippy, I like how you pointed us again to habit 5, because very often there will be reasons for it. And so sometimes it's as simple as asking the right questions. The right question may not be why outright, because that may be a difficult question to answer. But there usually is I guess I'll call it an appropriate question to ask, which will lead to understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, if you ask a why question, that our brains are also wired to come up with an answer, and sometimes the answer is a justification. It's a defense.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than asking a what question. So what's here? What's happening behind it? Yeah. So that's a tip for everyone out there.
Yeah.
Big tip there.
So rather than, if we were to go back to your 3 dishes, rather than asking why that one or why aren't you eating this, it might be as simple as asking, what do you like about this one? Or what do you prefer about this one over the other?
Yes.
And the answers may be very different, as surprising as it may sound.
Right. Or the answers might not be understandable because my son is only 1 year old. Let's see, JVic, what else have we got?
What do we have next?
What else do we got in our comment bag?
Woof. Woof.
This seems like topics that they got from things I submitted. Break versus procrastination. I'll let you lead off this. I'll let you lead this one off, Pao.
Okay. Break versus procrastination. First, I will, I guess, set the stage, so to speak, here. And I will openly say that and looking at the word procrastination, I will look at it with I guess, a negative lens, in that I don't think there is ever a situation where procrastination per se is a positive behavior. If I were to define what procrastination is, it's and this is probably oversimplifying it. It's delaying. It's delaying the need to do, or it's delaying the activity, or it's delaying facing something until the very last moment, or even perhaps beyond the deadline. It's waiting for that deadliest of deadlines, when you can no longer push it back
It's people.
without.
It's people telling me, but sir, I work best under pressure.
Yeah. And sometimes that is true. Sometimes I have seen people who actually work better under pressure. And I think that while there is a thin gray line, I think that's slightly different from procrastination. I think procrastination is just absolutely pushing it towards the very last moment. While on the other end, there is taking a break. And I guess the way I would put it is this. I don't know whether the question here is, how do you define, how do you distinguish between taking a break and procrastinating? But if it is, then one way I perhaps would do it is this. If you are doing it with the clear purpose of re-energizing, of resting, of taking a purposeful breath, how do you call this? Creatively speaking. If it is with the clear purpose of taking a breath, taking a breather, re-energizing, perhaps sparking creative juices. When sometimes when you've run out of ideas, when you just keep pounding away and just nothing comes out anymore, and you say, you know what, I need a break. And the purpose is precisely to allow your brain to sort of recharge and re-energize. Then I think that's taking a break. On the other hand, if it really is just, if we were to verbalize the thoughts, nah, I don't want to do that now. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Nah, mamaya na lang.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think that's procrastinating. And I think that's what distinguishes the two. Taking a break, in the positive sense, is purposeful. It has a positive effect of giving you more energy, giving you more creative juices, giving you inspiration, even as vague or as abstract as that may sometimes sound. On the other hand, procrastinating is really just, in a sense, delaying the inevitable, almost, or pushing back the inconvenient, which usually, on the other hand, has negative effects. Because then, to use our lingo, you end up with Q1s all over the place. Urgent and importance, stressful stuff all over the place.
I agree, and something I just want to add is, at the end of the day, the reason. If it's a break, or
Yes.
if it's something you've been putting off and avoiding. Some people, I remember I had a client one time tell me that he was just taking a break, but it's like, as we got deeper into it, the reasons were more about, but I don't actually want to go and do it. There's some reasons that's holding me back, versus I remember having a client who was so deep into their work that they realized they weren't taking a break to recharge and
Right.
fill themselves up with energy again, so to speak.
Right.
But yeah, at the end of the day, I'd like to believe that whether it's a genuine break or if it's something that you're avoiding.
Right. And I think, I like that word, no? If it's avoiding, and I think in part, when you get back to actually facing what it is that you're pushing back, that also gives you a clue as to whether you took a break or you're procrastinating.
Yes.
Because if your energy level is all about, okay, fine, then I think it's procrastinating. On the other hand, if you're coming back to it and thinking, okay, let's get this done, or now I'm excited, then I think that was a genuine break. It was a purposeful, re-energizing break.
And before we move on to the next one, there's a comment here that that I just have to say, may nagpapatanong. Kunwari daw nagnap ka sa break.
Okay.
And procrastination ba yon? I go back to my answer. At the end of the day,
And I think, let's be fair here. Sometimes, let's say you take a nap. Let's say you told yourself it's a power nap. You know how people talk about power naps and 20-minute naps. If you extend and you hit 2 hours, 1 hour, but it was not it was not a conscious decision. Your body simply refused to get.
Na ano yun? Napasarap yun.
That's one, yes. And I think another one, it might be a message from your body physically telling you, hey, you need a break. Whether it's from the work that you're doing or something else. Because it could very well be needing a break from watching 5 hours of Netflix before sleep, right?
Huli ka. Okay, what else do we have? I think we have time for one or two more.
I think so, yes. In the meantime, allow me to raise my blinds as I'm going dark.
Next one must be a blockbuster. It took JVIC so long.
Okay. You want to take this one?
Okay, so it's about speaking up. There's so many different aspects, and this. So this is a deep topic.
Yes.
This is a workshop in and of itself. This topic of speaking up. Okay. I'll relate it to my experience. What because before I could definitely put myself in the camp of the people who did not speak up, even though there was something I wanted to say.
Mm-hmm.
And what really helped me was at the end of the day, it's really a purpose of if I don't share it and it's something that I see as a potential problem or something important, then why not? I mean, and the value of expressing myself and speaking up. That's habit one for me. Being able to make the active choice to share what I needed to share. That's
right.
What's first coming to mind as I see the phrase of speaking up. And there's so many different situations and things that we can tackle about this.
Right. And you're right, Lippy. There are so many ways that we can look at this. There are so many discussion points. And I like how you put it. It could be a workshop in and of itself. I was tempted to go back to the 7 habits, and I think eventually we will. But a thought came to mind. Very often people talk about the 5 levels of why, for example. And I think for this one, while this is probably not a thing, for me, a thought that came to mind is there are at least 4, maybe 4 or 5 whats that we can ask when it comes to speaking up. And the first one would be about what? What is it really that we're either thinking of or we're being called to speak up about? And that alone has some dimensions to it. So I'll just cite perhaps the most important ones, which is sense of clarity. Because sometimes we're told, speak up, magsalita ka naman. But then the question becomes, do we even know what we're being told to speak up about or asked to speak up about? Is there that sense of clarity? And I'm saying this because in my own experience, especially when I was much younger, I could have been attending, say, a campaign pitch or maybe a review of a storyboard. And then my boss might go, speak up. What are your thoughts? And in my head, I was thinking, where do I even start? What am I supposed to talk about? And am I supposed to talk about these minor details, the colors here and there? Am I supposed to talk about the story? Am I supposed to admit that I don't understand what on earth is going on in this whole campaign? So there's that. There's the first level of what am I being called or what do I want to speak up about? Second is for what? For what end? What is the purpose of me speaking up? Is it simply to be heard? Or is it because I actually have a deeper purpose or maybe a mission, so to speak? Is there something that I'm pushing for? Is there something that I'm fighting for here? And I think this second what often becomes the tripping point. Sometimes when people are asked to speak up about something, I think that the people who remain silent, and like you, I was part of this camp. I have been part of this camp long ago, and sometimes I remain in this camp. And I think what keeps people in the camp of the quiet is that very often they don't feel a strong for what. There's no strong purpose to it. They feel like, okay, I'm just going to speak up because I'm being told to speak up. But if there's a strong enough why, therefore for what, I think people will be more inclined, more inspired to speak up. And then the last 2 questions that I have in mind are perhaps questions that will allow us, particularly the more timid ones, the ones who may not want to speak up all the time, these may be good questions for us to ask ourselves when we're in that, when we're sitting on that fence, when we're wondering, do I go here and keep
Yeah,
quiet? Do I go here and speak up? Maybe the first question is, what do I stand to lose if I don't speak up? Is there anything that I'm going to lose? Like, will my voice not be heard? Or let's say we're talking about a project. Let's say the theme for a, I don't know, a Christmas party or a New Year's kickoff. Will I feel bad if later on it goes another way? Will I end up thinking, ay, sana nagsalita ako? Because if you can imagine yourself feeling that, then I perhaps would suggest try leaning towards the speaking up more. Because I think there's much more to lose in feeling regret, which then brings me to the last question, which is, what do I stand to gain if I speak up? And here I can imagine all sorts of positives. So one might be, I stand to gain respect from my peers, from my colleagues, especially if I'm someone who's usually quiet and I speak up and I give a meaningful contribution. That might give me respect. Another one might be a much more practical one, which might be I get to influence the way things are done, or I get to influence the way things go. So again, for what? About what? For what? What do I lose? What do I gain? If I don't speak up, if I speak up.
Well, now what's coming to mind after you telling me that is, but that's from the perspective of someone who wants to speak up. What if I'm the person who wants the people in my team or the people in my group to speak up? One tip that comes to mind is it's also to be mindful of how I'm setting the environment. Because one reason why people might not be speaking up, and this was a situation of me before, was I'd shoot down every idea that they had on, like, that won't work. Have we tried that before, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So and because people feel like no one's listening to them,
right?
Eventually, they learn to, why should I speak up? Because this person's not going to listen to me anyway. So it's also being mindful of the environment that we are influencing and that we are setting up. There's research about this. If you want to Google, actually it was Google itself who ran that study, Project Aristotle, and Project Oxygen. So they set out to research what makes great managers and how to make an effective team. And one element is encouraging behaviors to allow people to feel safe enough to speak up without that being counted against them. And that's also a workshop in and of itself that we have. And just being mindful also of how I respond to people and how I share my opinion and how I invite people to also share can also influence how people speak up at the end of the day. It might not be as easy. Okay, so I remember my saying, what about in the real? In the real world, this can be something difficult because it's something that's been that people have learned as office culture. It could be something that's out of my control. It could be something that I've experienced growing up, and all of these different reasons. But at the end of the day, you're right. It boils down into what if I have to gain? What's the value of me speaking up? I remember a boss of mine telling me, Lippy, if you go to a meeting and you're not contributing anything meaningful, don't go to that meeting anymore.
Absolutely. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, just send me an email.
Right. No, but I like how you pointed us to the other side, because there is that side of, and I've been there. It can be frustrating to be maybe a leader, a supervisor, a manager, even a colleague, and to want to hear from even a friend. And I'm sure all of us have had that experience where you sort of, magsalita ka naman. And
that's the next episode. Let's invite a boss or two people, boss, and let's invite staff people. Let's have them talk about this with these purposely vague topics that JVic's throwing at us.
But I like how you put it there, Lippy. And I think there is a point which you already mentioned, which is to my mind, one of the pillars of coaching, which is creating a safe space. And I think that's important for people to speak up. I think we've been, what's the word? We've been programmed, or we've been taught somehow that speaking up is all about bravado, machismo. It's about courage and bravery.
Especially in this Asian, Philippine Asian setting of of ours, right? Our other counterparts across the world might not have that specific concern, but especially here in culture in Asia and in the Philippines, this is something that a lot of people, find either difficulty or can find challenging given different circumstances.
Right. And I think while yes, sometimes it definitely takes courage to speak up. I think if whether it's the boss or the colleagues or even the family members allow a safe space to be created, then it doesn't necessarily, it removes that hurdle, because I think that becomes a hurdle. Mm-hmm. If the person needs to build up and muster the courage to speak up about something that is, I understand, of course, if it's life-changing. Like if it's something that could potentially get you fired or promoted, or if it's something that could potentially make or break your relationship, then yes, there's a lot of courage involved there. But oftentimes you'll see people not speaking up about much less earth-shaking matters, so to speak. And I think if people don't speak up for much less earth-shaking matters, again, I'll go back to the 4
earth-shaking. I just had the coaching, and the coaching topic was, I like this colleague of mine. Do I tell her?
Well, again, maybe there's a call to speak up and say, hey. But to go back, I think colleagues, supervisors, leaders, there is that challenge, there's an invitation to create a safe space and to make everyone feel like we all care for one another here, and whatever is spoken here will not be, it may be hard to say completely, it will not be taken against you, but at least, it's not going to be thrown back at your face. And perhaps more so as a challenge for supervisors. And I thought about this, admittedly, Lippy, only as you were speaking, which I think is the beauty of these sessions. We sort of bounce ideas off each other. Earlier, I talked about the 4 whats. And I think the what do I have to lose, what do I have to gain, sometimes will come from the colleagues and the boss. So for example, if the boss, if the manager, if the leader shows that when you speak up, good things happen, you're recognized, or you influence the way things go, or even I listen more. If let's say I were the supervisor, then those are potential gains for most people. And if, for example, you're able to maybe not put it in the face and say, oh, Lippy, hindi ka nagsalita, yan, sorry ka na lang. Maybe it's more of, make it clear what they are giving up.
But sometimes, that works. It works to actually put it into, not necessarily put it into people's faces, but present the fact that we're here. Example, we're here to make a decision. If anyone wants to speak up about what we're going to do here, then this is the time to do it.
Sometimes, or forever hold your truth.
Yes, something like that. And I admit sometimes that's a necessary approach to take. Really just let's lay out all the cards and then what. So it's something like that, diba? The speak now or forever hold your peace type of situation.
And I think, just to share maybe my parting thoughts on this topic, I think at the end of the day, speaking up is about making a contribution to the discussion, to the conversation. So like we're doing here. For example, either of us might choose to just say, okay, in my head, I like what Lippy said, I'll just shut up. I think he said it all. On the other hand, I might feel like, there's this nice idea that I want to throw into the pot. And who knows, it might spark new conversations. So speaking up is really, to my mind, it's about making contributions. And I think at the end of the day, it's really about gauging. And again, I'll go back to something you mentioned earlier. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind, I guess. Or perhaps at least just imagine, what is the impact I want to make in this conversation? Do I want to make a difference? Do I want to influence it? Do I want to have my say? Then if you do, then speak up. If you want to have nothing to do with the conversation, then maybe, as you said, Lippy, don't even be part of the meeting. Wait for the email. I don't know.
Let's follow that. So there's a follow-up question as we wrap up our session.
Yeah.
So funny. We're talking about speaking up, and the statement here is, I'm asking for a friend. So what do you do when someone is insistent on making you speak up when you honestly have nothing to say? Even when I've already said that I will share my thoughts when I have any. I don't think it's speaking up that's the real concern here.
No, actually, it may sound funny, but this, I think, in itself is a challenge to speak up for yourself. in a manner that can be understood by the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, Lippy, let me know what your thoughts are here.
Before I forget, my thought would, if I was in this situation, I mean, I possibly might feel annoyed, and yet I'd be curious. What am I doing, saying that's making this person think that I have something to say when actually I don't? Because that's feedback for me.
Perhaps.
Maybe it might be my mean face. People told me before I have a mean face, and sometimes when I'm deep in thought, that comes out. And do you have something to say? I'm like, no, it's just I'm just feeling the moment. Maybe, yeah, that's right. It's it is about speaking up for yourself.
And so I like that. I like the idea of asking. I guess the question there is, what makes you think that I have something to say? And of course, probably said in a friendlier fashion, because that sounds a bit that sounds a bit confrontational.
Nasabi ko na lahat. Yeah, telenovela type lines. We hopefully don't go there.
Yeah. Well, I guess on my end, so this friend here says that even when I've already said that I will share my thoughts when I have any. So, and before that, there's the phrase, honestly have nothing to say. Then, I guess if I were to find myself in this situation, I'll probably preface what I would say with something like, to be frank, or to tell you honestly, right now, I don't think, but there is nothing I don't have anything to add to the conversation. Or depending perhaps on what the conversation is like, how formal it is, it might even be as simple as, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank right now. Can I share my thoughts?
Or it could go as casual as, are you asking me for my idea, or are you telling me to come up with an idea? It could be that.
That's a good question right there. Yeah. Or, yeah, and I think at a certain point, it's really a challenge to be straight and upfront and say, sorry, right now, I don't have anything. Yeah, and I do know how this feels. Sometimes there are some situations where you're backed into a corner and you sort of feel like, okay,
I got nothing.
I got nothing. But
yeah,
do I shut up? And I've been there. Do I shut up? Look like a fool? Look like I'm not here? Have no value? And of course, these are all self-judgments. Or do I speak up for the sake of, which to my mind isn't very valuable either, because you're really just pretty much, I don't know, it's almost like lip service.
This all depends on the context of where and when and how this situation is happening. Because if this is something that you're being asked to speak up, but then you were tasked to prepare something, right? That's a totally different story versus I just want your opinion, but I got nothing to say. That's not already been said. That's on the table. So it really depends on the situation, I feel.
So, funnily enough, as you were saying that, Lippy, that it does depend on the context. And I think, and I don't know if you agree with this, but the thought that came to mind is, I think the more important, the more meaningful the conversation and the topic, the more important it is as well for someone to be able to say, you know what, right now I have nothing meaningful to say, or there's nothing I'd like to add. Because if we speak up for the sake of speaking up, then sometimes we just muddle up the conversation with ideas that we don't really have any conviction or we don't have any investment in. We just throw them out there. You know what? It's almost like, okay, so you'll shut up, this is what I'll say. And we don't realize it's going to bring the conversation in all sorts of directions. And then we're like, okay, I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah. And listening to the situation plays a big part in how you handle this. Because now I'm getting flashes of, okay, what do you do when someone is insistent, make you speak up? When you ask, they have nothing to say. Is this work? Is this personal? Is this someone confessing their love for you? I mean, and again, we go back into listening and what is important. And I think that's bottom line. You what's at the heart of this conversation? If you can express that and have a person also say that, and actually this is what makes this so important and whatnot, then maybe things will go more smoothly.
Yeah, I think your last point, Lippy, was an important one. It's what makes it so important for me to speak up here. Because for all you know, it might simply be the person wants to know that you're around. And so it might be as simple as, you know what, I don't have anything to add, but I understood what you said. So it might be as simple as playing back, this is what I heard from you. So if it's about understanding, then I understood you, but I'm not sure what to say here right now. I don't have thoughts to share right now. It might be that. It might be that the person is looking for the affirmation that you're there, that you're present, so to speak.
Looking for an answer to their
Yeah.
question. All right, and now we're getting to the signal that that's all the time we have for today.
Well, yeah. So this again, it was an experiment. Yeah, as Lippy and I mentioned earlier, these were and I think it was clear by the way we were taking in the trigger words or the goodies we'd pick up from the basket or would be thrown from the basket. But this is an interesting conversation.
And when you guys have any other questions or any other phrases that you want thrown at us and you want us to also discuss, or sometimes it might not be just me and Pao. We will also invite the other facilitators as well. Just put it in the comment bin or send us an email, and then we'll get to it. I'm sure we read everyone.
And it doesn't.
No. JV and Amanda reads every single one, and then they spring it all on us in this conversation space.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't even have to be a challenge type approach. Like it doesn't have to say, "Oh, let's see what you have to say about being choosy." It might be a very practical question.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do when, or how do you handle a situation? And we'll share our thoughts on that as well. So I hope this has been a meaningful conversation. I've certainly enjoyed it, Lippy. I've enjoyed hearing your thoughts.
Thanks for having me on board, Pao.
And so thank you to Lippy, Amanda, Javik, to the friends who have shared their questions and their
the friends asking for their friends.
Yes. So again, this is an experiment, and I think the beauty of this, at least from my perspective, was that it allowed us to spontaneously and perhaps with the danger of overusing a word, share with an even more heightened sense of authenticity, our own thoughts, our own perspectives, the way we've learned to apply the principles that we talk about. So again, Lippy and I both alluded to the 7 habits, habit 1, habit 2, habit 5. But as you see, we didn't define the habits really. We just showed how perhaps we've learned to apply them and how they have played in our lives, in our own experiences, with our own personal experiences or people we know, clients that we know. Lippy, anything you'd like to add?
No, that's it. I was about to say like the heightened awareness or heightened piece of authenticity. That could be a statement in and of itself. We could we could talk about and thank you so much for sending in the comments and the questions, and we hope to see you guys again soon.
And share with us any of your thoughts. If this works for you, then let us know. If there's anything you'd suggest we tweak, do slightly differently, then we're all ears.
If there's anyone you want on this show or on this space, let us know.
So again, thank you for joining us in this Facebook Live session. This is slightly different in different ways. So again, 2 facilitators sharing thoughts pretty much spontaneously. And then also, particularly for this session, you'll be seeing this as a pre-recorded session that we're recording on Wednesday, January 20 in the afternoon. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. And we do hope you join us for our future sessions. Again, our aim in these sessions, is to make the concepts, the principles that we hold dear at FranklinCovey all the more relevant, all the more practical to you, our viewers, our audience, to help us enable greatness in your lives. And greatness can be anything that matters, truly matters, dearly matters to you. So with that, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Lippy, again. Thank you, Javik. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks, Pao. Thank you, Javik, Amanda. Thanks for joining us, guys. See you next time.
See you next time and take care.